Good morning, or should I say good day. I hope all of you are doing well. This is almost the end of your course. And we are going to do a case study today. So most of the work will be done by you. It should take you about 2 to 4 hours, depending on how fast you do. But I would expect that you take this seriously and really apply your head to this, okay? So today's session, what we're going to do is basically take a real case study of monitoring and evaluation. And I'm going to interactively go through that with you and ask you to design the study as if it was yours. Also learn from it, right? What are the cases you have done? So let's get started. Okay, welcome back. My name is Dr. Shalini Gopalkrishnan. I am a professor in the Bay Area, USA, California. And I think monitoring and evaluation is a very, very important aspect of what we do, you know. So whether all the interventions that we've done or are going to do in the world, will they be useful? Are we actually making effect, or is it just, you know, putting resources, you know, whether it's our human time or other things into doing things to achieve, whether it's equality or money for jobs for people or health. So we want to make sure that you do it well. So it's all very nice in theory, like, you know, we told you all the various methods to do it and stuff like that. But how does it really happen in real life? Okay. So let's get started. So here is our comprehensive plan. So what we're going to do is we talk about objective setting very briefly. As you've learned in all the earlier sessions, setting an objective is very, very critical. Then we'll talk about the case study and the conclusions. Okay. So I want you to read the case study. You don't have to read the whole thing if you don't want to right now. You can start only at least in the beginning and follow along. And tell me what the case study is about. Now, you can either go to this link on just Google search it, or you can go to this drive and it actually has the study. So I'll show you what the study is about and what the article looks like. So this study is Central Region Livelihood Security Project. And this is impact assessment report of the VSNL component, okay? We know the year it is conducted. And when I ask you to read pages 5 through 8, I would expect you, before we move along, this executive summary you finished reading. Okay, so this is how today's session will go. I'm telling you to read just pages 5 to 8. It'll take at least 10 to 15 minutes to read that. You're going to pause the video for that time. And now, of course, you can just keep going ahead. It's not going to be of any value at all. It will be a waste of your time, right? If you just keep going ahead without actually doing all the tasks that are given in the things. It's of course doable, totally technology will let you do that. But in order to get the best impact out of this session and, you know, get your entire certificate, it would be best that you actually pause this. So right now, pause me and take as much time, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and finish reading that part, okay? And when you come back, you're going to answer the question, what is the case study about, okay? So I'm definitely not pausing here. I'm expecting you to pause. I'll pause for a minute, then you move forward. So pause now. Okay, welcome back. So I hope you got a sense of what this case study was. As you know, it's in Malawi, in this area of Malawi, Kasunga, Longwe, Salima, Dedza, Chingi. Okay. And it is about trying to see whether the village savings and loan operation was successful or not. Did anybody have anything else? Think about what else did you learn about it? And there, of course, a lot more things now we can do. So now what were the objectives? So what were the key areas that CARE found? Was it something they did that year or was it past studies? Please read the document and list it, okay? So I want you now, you finished pages 5 through 8. Go ahead and read ahead. And again, pause. So that's the reason. If you do correct pauses, this should take you about 3 to 4 hours, right? My session is not going to be very, very long if you continuously go, but it's going to be useless, absolutely useless to you. So please, 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 please just read the things. So now I want you to focus on what are the key areas? Were the key areas something that CARE did, or was it somebody else did? Was it a past study? Was it a current study? Okay. This is another area now to pause. I expect at least about 20 minutes for you. Cool. Welcome back. Thank you for reading. So what were the key areas they found? They found there were weak community and farmer organizations in that area. They found that the agriculture productivity was low and the yields were not very high. They also found the water catchment structures and other infrastructure was very weak. And there was limited income earning opportunities, right? They just couldn't earn money. And if you want, again, this is on page 9. And my question was, when was it done? This wasn't done by this group, which is doing the intervention. This was done several years ago. So this is another thing that you learn in M&E, that you could actually have data from earlier. You know, these are questions or issues that were raised earlier in earlier things. And you can actually use that as a benchmark to actually decide on intervention. So when this company came in, they were like, oh, there's a study done in 1998. And they found that these are the big issues happening there. And what we want to focus on is limited income earning. They could have focused on any of this. This is what their donor or whatever they decided that this is going to be happening. So the objective was, let us improve earning opportunities, right? That was the objective of the thing. And they took that as a gap and they tried to do something about it. So now, the next thing is, what are the objectives for the study? So like I said, these are key areas that they were focusing on, and they said, hey, we're going to take that limited earning opportunity and move it forward. So what are the objectives for the study? How many were there? So again, read the document and list them. Now, these are very specific, so look for it on a specific page. What the objectives were there? How many were there? Do you think the objectives mirrored this limited earning opportunities well or not? This is a good time to pause. Welcome back. So again, the answers were on page 10. So there were two objectives. One was assess and document the impact of village savings and loan program since inception based on the design, right? And then now remember, this is monitoring and evaluation, so it's not fully done. It's not yet started. It's already begun, right? They already also wanted to conduct a socioeconomic and gender analysis to see, because what they were finding was, women were doing amazing in the program. And so they wanted to see whether this woman was saving a lot and, you know, doing a lot of following the program well, whether that translated into improved household welfare. Okay, so that was their objective. Now remember, given this objective, your M&E is going to be based on that only, nothing else. Okay, this is what the focus is. This is what you're going to do. Now, if I've asked you a couple of questions right now, if you couldn't find them, I have put down the pages where you could find them. I have given the answers. If you're having difficulty finding them, I would suggest pause, take 2 hours when you're quiet, when you have time, sit and read the entire case study and come back to the session. Otherwise, like I said, it is a waste of your time, and I would not like to waste your time. I know it's very valuable. You have so many things in the world to do. So far, if you've had difficulty finding these answers, please, please, please stop, go back, read it carefully, and so that you can actually follow along and do the answers, because that is where your value will be, learning this. Okay. Now this is big. This should at least take you 30 to 40 minutes or more. What kind of monitoring and evaluation design would you choose? Which one would you choose and why? And try and apply one of the methods we've learned. And if possible, take a sheet of paper, or if you have a Word document or something, just write on the main aspects. So now when you're doing this, think about, you can go back to your old sessions, to your notes, see what kind of designers were there. We talked about many different kinds of design. Which one would you choose? You know the situation, you know the objectives, you know what was done. What design would you apply? Why? Just don't say, I'll do RCTs or random control or quasi-experimental or whatever. Do not say that. Say, I will use this because this is my reasoning. That will help you develop your thinking about what is good or bad. Okay. Ideally, if you've not read the entire case study by now, they'll really help you. If you have, you may still have views, right? Like, hey, listen, I don't agree with what they did. I have a different idea because mine is a better one. Critique it, okay? I would really, really like you to list down all the criteria within that. Okay? Just don't sit down and say, yeah, RCD done. No. Why? What is a control group? What is the randomized group? What are you going to do? Not going to do? Whatever that is, okay? So pause for at least about 30 to 40 minutes, write these down, and then come back. Welcome back. While you're doing the analysis, like you chose a design, I hope you thought of the unit of analysis. Remember, that's an important thing you have to think of. I hope you thought of the sample size. I want to know whether you thought of a control group. Should you have one or not? I hope you were thinking of what indicators. What are the indicators that will prove the objectives? I hope you thought about what numbers in the baseline indicators justify intervention. So what does this even mean? Let's go back to our objectives. They wanted to assess and document the impact. What is the meaning of impact here? What is the indicator to show impact? Is it the number of people who are actually saving? Is it the number of people whose household welfare is improved? What do you mean by improved? By how much? 5%, 10%? Over what time period? 1 year, 2 years? So you realize the amount of details I need from you? If you didn't put those things, do it right now. So look at the objectives. Keep the objectives front and center. Ideally, write these objectives on a sheet of paper and write them down. Okay. This one of the objectives is also, hey, did the woman do better? So what kind of data will you collect on the woman? Think about impact and improve. How will you define them? Be very clear. You say, I will think it's a success only if improvement was more than 10%. I want real numbers. Okay. Impact means what? 90% of the women saved, right? So when you're thinking of the design, decide the unit of analysis. Am I doing it per individual person who is saving? Or some other unit, or the village? What is it? What is the sample size? How many people should I do? Would you have a control group? Should I compare it with somebody? Why? Why not? and deciding on the indicators, very, very critical, okay? So again, I know you did the design a couple of minutes ago. Stop again, pause. Welcome back. So by now, if you're at this stage right now, you should have almost done about 2 hours worth of work, okay? You read parts of the case studies, you understood the objectives, the key areas, you thought of the design, you went back to your notes, looked at what design would be the best. You had a good reason for your design. You focused on the unit of analysis. You decided what it was. Ideally, do not read ahead because this will help you think critically, okay? Now, what did they do? I would never have done that probably. I would have done something different, right? They used the participatory rapid assessment tools, which is normally a qualitative tool, but they changed it and included some quantitative numbers. They did case studies and focus groups. And they chose 6 villages, Kabudula, Kalola, and Kongoni, and Zoli and Shwere in Dowa district. So that was their sample, right? So we know what their sample was. We know what their design was. It was PRA. Now, if you don't remember PRA from what you've learned, it's basically where you get people to come and talk about what they, various indicators and structures and questions that you ask them, okay? The unit of analysis was household, not individual person. So they decide household. Did you get all these answers right? Yes. And obviously, there's villages you wouldn't have known, but you can think. Maybe you must have thought, hey, let me have 200 people or 300 people. So how many numbers did they choose within those villages? Well, did it match your thing? They had a control villages. They had 4. What do you think of this? The 6 intervention, 4 control. Good or bad? What do you think? Critique this. Tell me, is it good or bad? Now, the unit of analysis is interesting, and I think that was good. Because, why was it good? Because we go back to the objective. And the objective is, it translates into improved household welfare, right? So that's very, 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 very important. So the household, the way they define was people that eat from the same pot. People that eat from the same pot are considered a household, right? Because they were like, oh, who's household, who's not household? That was, I think, an interesting definition. So household was good. And we can actually see whether this is a good way or not. Okay, so we are not saying this is a great case study. We are saying this is one case study, and I want you to learn how to critique this. Okay? So remember this, we were talking about central Malawi, and they took those districts from here and here. These were the 2 districts. We said these are the 6, these are 2 districts of Dowa and Lilongwe, and they took 6 villages, 4 from here and 2 from here, right? So these were the places. So they're a bit further away, so at least, we can see the differences in between them. Now we had also a question on indicators. So look at the indicators. The indicator, big indicator, was number of people involved in IGA, income generating activities, and what are the type of IGAs? Remember, but the key area, they said, hey, there's limited earning potential. So they wanted to take how many people were involved. Number of assets bought. Did you buy a goat or a cow? What did you buy? Availability of labor. Houses with iron sheets. Cash savings, right? Good market price. That means like you get either cattle or vegetable or whatever that is. Did you get a good market price for it? Because, like they said, the yields were very poor. They were not making a lot of money. The number of organized farmer marketing groups. They get credit. Could they buy bicycles? They have the ability. They may or may not, but they have the ability. What about clothing? People employed. Inputs and establishment of groups, the VSNL groups, do they have that, right? So they thought of all these indicators. Did you think of any of these? How many of these did you think of? Were there any which you thought of which they haven't, which could be pretty interesting? Yes. So remember, every M&E that has been done, that thousands and millions done by now, there's no perfect one, or they said this is the best one. The best thing is for us to learn from it. And if you just read one and say, oh, this is the best, I'm going to copy this, then you're not thinking. The whole idea is for you to think very deeply about the issues, which are probably very local to Malawi in this case. And this is what they decide. But I know it's limited knowledge that you have right now about the case. But if you thought of something, you're like, this is good. Okay. Good. So you probably read a few pages now, maybe about 15 pages. Let's move forward. Let's go to the next one. Okay. So now, what are the results of the baseline survey? Does it warrant that an intervention is needed? Was the sampling design a good decision, a good one? Was it based on a statistical formula or a rule of thumb? What are the advantages and disadvantages? So I now want you to critique this design sample unit of analysis. How would you improve it? This should take a lot of time because this is your opinion. Critiquing this. What are advantages, disadvantages? What do you think an intervention is needed or not? So now the answers are going to be varied. I'm not going to give you a perfect answer, but you're going to think through this. You're going to think through this. This should take you at least 30 minutes, minimum. I'm going to pause right now and give you some chance to do this. So 30 minutes later, I'll see you. Welcome back. So the results from the baseline survey found that 89% of the households are in poor category. 74% of them are in very poor category. And these are all on page 10. So we find that 89% were poor, so intervention would be useful. The sample that they used was 10%. 10% of the intervention. Now, what do you think? Is that a good way to do it or a bad way? Why is it good? It sounds right. What are the disadvantages of it? You know very well from your other sessions that if I have not done a good random sampling, the statistical results may not be represented. So you have to be very careful about that. When you get the results, think about what the actual sampling design was. So when the results, you have to take with either a pinch of salt or handfuls of salt and say, oh, this wasn't representative, so therefore these results are good, bad, or ugly. Okay. I hope you came up with some good ideas on how to critique this. I wish this was interactive because I could have heard some ideas from you and maybe I could have learned too, right? So thank you. So by now you're probably 2.5 hours in. You've done a good job. If you have actually sat down and paused at each of the places and read the papers and thought very deeply about this. Okay. So thank you for hanging on. How was the data collected? Were people trained or did they hire trained people? Did they pre-test the guide? Remember they had focus groups and case studies. Did they pre-test it? Did they pre-test in the field or other experts? Remember there are two methods of pre-testing interview, guide, survey, questionnaire, whatever that is. You can either go to experts and do it, or you can actually sit and do it. Go in the field and take a small sample. How many sections were in the guide? Remember that they said they'll do qualitative? Was it qualitative or quantitative? What kind of case studies would be useful in this? So pause me, stop me right now. Spend at least about 30 minutes reading it, thinking about this. What kind of case studies would be useful? And I'll see you soon. Welcome back. I know this is very long if you're actually doing it the way I'm asking you to. So people were trained in focus group interviews. The guide was pre-tested. There were 5 sections. The first 3 sections were quantitative and the last 2 were qualitative. They had 4 kinds of case studies. Individuals, the first one was used to collect more data from them. Then another case study was the facilitator of the groups to bring out the dynamics within the group formation. They did a case study on that. Like how does a group form, right? Remember the samples that they created, how do they form? And they made a case study so that people, when you're reading this, you're like, okay, maybe even though I didn't do a random sampling, the way I created the group was in such a way that it helped get a more representative sample. Then there were another 2 case studies were conducted to understand the group structure and dynamics at a very micro level. Okay, so this was the answer for data collection. Let's go to the next thing. What is the focus of the case? Do you think the control and the interventions group are well matched? In what ways? So look at this chapter 3, page 13 to 16. How would you improve it? What possible roadblocks would you encounter in achieving a perfect match control? So suppose one of your strategies of design was, I want a control group. And you were like, I want a good match. It looks perfect on paper, right? But what could happen if you were trying to get a perfectly matched control group? What, in reality, how could that work? Was the focus of the objectives, was the objectives for women? Was the initial key areas targeted for women? Why did it change? When? How? Okay. It's a good time to pause now for you to sit back and now think. I'll give you about 30 minutes here. Okay. I hope your brain's really thinking now. Welcome back. So they were pretty well matched. They showed us some kind of demographics that were pretty well matched. They were not perfect. They found there were more men in the control group. Marital status matched, as you can see from graphs, are pretty good. The number of dependents were very, very different. And that could change the answers, right? Now, remember, this is, you're talking about the unit of analysis household. So if you have more dependents in one group or the other, the answers would very, very different. So let's say in the intervention group, you had average household size of, now you had 2 dependents, but in the other side, you had 5. You're not comparing the same things. So that's something you should be careful with analyzing. Education, the gap was almost about 8%. That could be significant too, right? So now when you actually come down to analyzing it, whether you're using statistical tools or just reading those, make sure you're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, the same thing. So don't compare a person from Doha district with 10 dependents with the person in the control group with 2 dependents. Don't compare one person with education post-secondary and another one elementary, right? So those answers are not going to be compared. Now, initially, when they started the study was not they started the intervention, it wasn't meant for women alone, it was meant for everybody. But while they were doing the study, they found women were very, anecdotally, They found that the women were very, very, very receptive. So when the objectives were created for the M&E, remember, not for the study, for the M&E, they said, let's check, is it true that only women do this? And the results actually, you know that it proved the perception. The target was not women alone, right? The target was things. Now remember, we are just focusing on the objectives. Was it an impact? Was it an improvement? Did the woman think? Yes, it actually did. Okay, let's go back to the graph now. What does this graph show? This shouldn't take you more than about 10 minutes. It should be about 3.5 hours right by now into this actual thing if you paused correctly. Unless you're a fast reader and you're like, I can get this so fast. But you should be about 3.5 hours into the program. What does this show? Take a minute and maybe 5 or 10 minutes pause and think, look at it. Welcome back. This looks pretty interesting, right? Now we can see the control was poor, 100% control now. But look at VSNL and now. Definitely moderate increase was 62%. So therefore, definitely it seems prima facie that there was interest. Control baseline, of course, it was the same. But let's see, did the baseline of this change? You're like, okay, the baseline here could be probably different. Look at the baseline, he was poor. It moved to moderate here, right? And the moderate here probably moved to better off. I'm not necessarily the same people, but we don't know, right? But here, we didn't, we had very poor. In this case, we didn't have any very poor. So prima facie, looking at this, this looks like, yes, it actually moved. And also looking at what the households think. So this is wealth categories, what the household baselines were. So let's look at this. So the poor category is reduced to only 4%, which is like amazing, right? Imagine moving from 61% to 5 is like really, really good. Okay. So the reduction of 67%, I mean, almost. And the moderate category also, we actually sat and did. And like we said, in the control group, it was exactly the same. So I hope this session is helping you think through a case study, okay? Think through a M&E when you are designing one. This is what we are showing you is post, but the process I'm trying to do is for you to think through steps by step, okay? What you could do, what you should be doing. So now I want you to look at the case study and choose at least 3 graphs which help us understand the results. How would you improve them? What are things that you would look at that they would? And I know you paused and you looked at these graphs probably for a minute, but these are 3 graphs which could be indicated, okay? So remember, back to objectives, back to objectives. Was there improvement in household welfare? And you like the baseline was this, now is this definite improvement. Was there any impact? Yes. Where they get money from, right? So now remember, look at this. The baseline, they were not getting any savings and this thing, but now they have higher savings and things. More business professions are happening. Piecework has actually reduced. Farm production is exactly the same. Everything else seems to social capitalist things. And here is for people in control group and not. So these are 3, and there are other graphs which you also, if you did other graphs, absolutely right. So did the M&E show that it was a success? Remember, the job of the M&E was not to create the intervention, but to see whether it was a success or not. So that if this is a halfway point or a quarter point or whatever point it is, you know what you have to change in the future. Did they do a good job of designing data collection analysis? What improvements would you make and why? So now this is your last 20 minutes. Write down a good critique of this entire thing. And that can actually help you sit down and understand this well. Welcome back. And we know that, yes, it did actually do a pretty good job of that. And we know in the case study it really helped Malawi and those districts. So what is the conclusion? Keep objectives as a primary focus. You are evaluating the objectives. You are monitoring the objectives. Do not go things. And for M&E, I would suggest you study as many cases as you can. There are many, many cases. You can go online and just look for them and critique the cases. Say, hey, if I was there, I would have done this differently. You know, they forgot to ask this. This would have improved the thing. We are in constant improvement. I hope this is useful, and good luck in your career and life, and God bless you, your families.